Welcome to One Chapter, One Thought. I'm Pastor Chris from Lincroft Bible Church in New Jersey, and every weekday I read one chapter of the New Testament and offer one brief devotional thought. Today's reading is from the book of 1 Corinthians, chapter 9. Am I not free? Am I not an apostle? Have I not seen Jesus our Lord? Are you not my work in the Lord? If to others I am not an apostle, at least I am to you, for you are the seal of my apostleship in the Lord. My defense to those who examine me is this: do we not have a right to eat and drink? Do we not have a right to take along a believing wife, just like the rest of the apostles and the brothers of the Lord in Cephas? Or do only Barnabas and I not have a right to refrain from working? Who at any time serves as a soldier at his own expense? Who plants a vineyard and does not eat the fruit of it? Who tends a flock and does not use the milk of the flock? I am speaking these things according to human I am not speaking these things according to human judgment, am I? Or does not the law also say these things? For it is written in the law of Moses, you shall not muzzle the ox while he is threshing. God is not concerned about oxen, is he? Or is he speaking altogether for our sake? Yes, for our sake it was written, because the plowman ought to plow in hope, and the thresher to thresh in hope of sharing the crops. If we sowed spiritual things in you, is it too much if we reap material things from you? If others share the right over you, do we not more so? Nevertheless, we did not use this right, but we endured all things so that we will cause no hindrance to the gospel of Christ. Do you not know that those who perform sacred services eat the food of the temple, and those who regularly tend to the altar have their share from the altar? So also the Lord directed those who proclaim the gospel to get their living from the gospel. But I have used none of these things. And I am not writing these things so that it will be done so in my case, for it would be better for me to die than to have any man make my boast an empty one. For if I preach the gospel, I have nothing to boast of, for I am under compulsion. For woe to me if I do not preach the gospel. For I do this voluntarily. For if I do this voluntarily, I have a reward, but if against my will, I have a stewardship entrusted to me. What then is my reward? That, when I preach the gospel, I may offer the gospel without charge, so as to not make full use of my right in the gospel. For though I am free from all men, I have made myself a slave to all so that I might win more. To the Jews I became as a Jew, so that I might win the Jews. To those who are under the law, as those under the law, though not being myself under the law, so that I might win those who are under the law. To those who are without the law, as without the law, though not being without the law of God, but under the law of Christ, so that I might win those who are without the law. To the weak I became weak, so that I might win the weak. I have become all things to all men, so that by all means I might save some. I do all things for the sake of the gospel, so that I may become a fellow partaker of it. Do you not know that those who run in a race all run, but only one wins the prize? Run in such a way that you will win. Everyone who competes in the games exercises self-control in all things. They then do it to receive a perishable wreath, but we do it to receive an imperishable one. Therefore, I run in such a way, not as without aim. I box in such a way as not beating the air, but I discipline my body and make it my slave, so that after I have preached to others, I myself will not be disqualified. One thought. How far would you go to reach people with the gospel? Paul's example here in 1 Corinthians 9 challenges us to get uncomfortable to reach others, particularly when we see what Paul did in verses 19 through 23. What did Paul become? First of all, he became a slave of all. He says, even though I am free from all men, I have made myself a slave to all, that I might win more. Paul's whole orientation of his life was to serve others. And while he didn't have to submit himself to others, he willingly did so in order to reach them with the gospel. We also see that Paul was highly adaptable. To the Jews, he became like a Jew. He followed their customs. He probably dressed like them. He knew the culture well because he grew up Jewish. I mean, he was from his heritage a Jew, so he knew how to dress. He knew what to eat. He became like those under the law. That's again referring to Jewish people. And then, though, when he was with Gentiles, those without the law, meaning those not under the Mosaic covenant, those outside that, those who are Gentiles, Paul then adapted again. He says to those who are without the law as without the law. So he probably dressed differently, maybe spoke a little differently, ate different kinds of food, tried to fit into the culture as best as he could. And he says, to the weak, I became weak. So he's not flaunting all of his abilities and his prestige and his position. He's wanting to enter into their world. And his overall posture is found in verse 22. He says, I've become all things to all men, so that by all means I might save some. So Paul is willing to do almost anything, obviously in the bounds of God's goodness and grace and his will for our lives, but he's willing to do almost anything within the bounds to get the gospel out to more people. And that's the point. That's what his adaptability was for. It was that he might save some. So how far are you willing to go? How adaptable are you? Paul does this all for the sake of the gospel, right? The good news of Jesus. Oftentimes, though, we get it reversed. We are rigid on our own preferences and flexible on the truth. Too often we might fudge on the gospel. Well, maybe, Jesus isn't the only way. This person's like a pretty good person. Maybe they'll get in. And then we're rigid on our own cultural, ethnic, racial, political, or personal preferences. And we have like this mindset of like, people's got to fit into our culture. Paul had it exactly the other way around. Faithfulness to the gospel for Paul means that he holds fast to the gospel message about Christ and being willing to adapt, to get uncomfortable, to reach others. That is what faithfulness to the gospel looks like.